The dynamic of forming groups has shifted throughout World of Warcraft's history. There's a recurring complaint from players trying to get into pickup groups, or PUGs. It's a common complaint with a common response. One side says there's no good reason group leaders should have conditions to join that are far above the minimum requirement. The response? If you can't find a group, make one yourself. Make some sense. You can't get kicked if you're the leader. You set the conditions. You invite or reject who you want. But you are the one sitting there, taking the time trying to put the group together. Also, depending on what you're doing, you set up the strategy, performance monitoring, callouts, raid size, composition, market positioning, player expectation, and in the end, the blame, if things mess up. Suddenly, that control turns into the weight of responsibility, and not all players can overcome that anxiety regardless of even their skill and gear. Between inflated requirements and the fear of failure, where do we go from there? Hey, it's Sol with news, opinions, and analyses. Today we're going to look at the dynamics of group building from a few different perspectives, like the leaders of PUGs, its members, and mine too as the raid leader for my guild. Group building is one of the core foundations of the World of Warcraft. We'll focus on what it's like today and why the pre-made group tool made grouping both easier and more frustrating. Let's get this complaint out of the way first. It isn't entirely fair to have high requirements that greatly exceed the content itself, because that leaves out a lot of players. But we've got to understand the goals and attractiveness of such a group. This type of group is probably short on time and or patience. They want results, and by results I mean a fast and uninterrupted run with no deaths. To meet this, there's obviously an incentive to take players with high gear and related achievements. It's no guarantee of success, but there's a much higher chance otherwise. Many players in this scenario don't have immediate time on their hands and need a predictable time frame that ends with their goals accomplished. PUG leaders of these groups don't have the time to listen to your case of having a high aptitude, being an alt, or any excuse for that matter. So these groups are typically the ones that attract powerful characters with a strong knowledge of dungeon and raid mechanics. Experienced groups want experienced people, and expect a performance that reflects that. This leaves other players struggling. They wade in the pre-made group pool with hope for a merciful leader looking to just fill a group with warm bodies, join a progression-based group, or make the group themselves. Joining a group can be hard for an undergeared toon or for a player who lacks experience, unless they lie. But making a group can be hard for any player. Skill, gear, and progression might be reflected on your character sheet, but the ability to lead a group on your own isn't something so easily tracked by the game. Knowing where to stand, what mobs can be skipped, and the optimum rotation during the burn phase is, for argument's sake, an easy skill to learn. It just takes some memorization and practice. By contrast, directing a group is an entirely different monster, as this often involves the handling of people, and that takes a separate set of skills. It's why some group leaders demand ahead of the curve or AOTC achievements, on top of a high item level. This helps filter out possible scenarios of the player not knowing what to do, but in another way avoids situations where the group leader has to accurately explain what to do or what went wrong. High requirements are presented in such a way that the group expects a smooth experience that relies on everyone knowing what to do despite meeting for the first time. Coordination and communication shouldn't be needed because the group ought to simply fall into their roles. Basically, it's equivalent to creating an LFR-like experience, with the bar raised higher. Many successful groups are made this way. Many more, though, make it only so far. It's because this methodology to group building is one of expecting overpowering flawlessness. It creates toxic situations for many players after a mistake is made and a wipe occurs. Some of this may seem familiar. Whoever made the mistake is kicked without explanation. Someone leaves because their faith in the group is shaken. Someone insists that this encounter strategy is poorly planned, but didn't want to speak up until now, to make a point. Members insist that the encounter is easy and wonder why underperformers can't get it together, condescend, and so on. The group leader is called out on poor management of invitees, probably by the top performer of the group. And there are innumerable other scenarios, including total collapse of the group. I'm oversimplifying when I say that there are two types of players in WoW, leaders and members. PUG leaders have it really tough, with little question. In the situation I described earlier, a PUG member simply leaves and finds another group, or logs off. Their responsibility is limited to their individual execution and contribution. Meanwhile, the group leader is burdened with rebuilding a damaged group or starting from scratch, which is never easy because patience is not infinite. The responsibilities of the PUG leader greatly outweigh that of the member. It's a natural assumption that the group leader knows everything that needs to be known, even if it doesn't pertain to their role of tank, healer, or DPS. And they may have a strong grasp of the concepts in their head during the thick of an encounter, but the translation of instinct into thoughts into coherent words used to coach, correct, and train is a different skill to hone. And then there's of course patience and having a thick skin, among other social traits. Not every leader possesses these. We see some demonstration of this when members are kicked without warning or when the leaders themselves rage on the group. Leading a group is often a thankless job, but at the same time personally rewarding. A good leader is remembered just as well as the group's top performer, sometimes more so. Successful group leaders are rewarded with friend requests and the like, but it's less common than it probably should be. Many players who see themselves as small, faceless cogs in the Warcraft machine treat other players the same way, people they'll never see again, so there's no point trying to build bonds. That aloofness is what makes PUGs feel flimsy after even one wipe. And it's that which makes group leaders more hesitant, even fearful to build groups in the first place. No one likes to fail, so why try? Couple this with systems of convenience like a pre-made group tool. Its purpose is to facilitate groups regardless of realm, which is terrific. At the same time, its promiscuous nature allows players to leave groups at the first sign of trouble and join another. Let's talk about groups based on a guild or a close coalition of players, and I'll use myself as the example. These groups by nature include players who already know each other. They group together for a number of weeks, months, even years. I hear and often say to myself that if it wasn't for this guild, I probably wouldn't be playing the game. My psyche as a player personally demands a semblance of familiarity in part of my team. For me, it's not just my co-tank, healer, and a bloodlust. It's Shaddix, AJ, and Zero. They're more than just the instruments I as a raid leader use to accomplish the raid's goals. They're friends. We have a relationship to satisfy similar interests, and when that's not being pursued at the moment, we hang out, chat, talk about our families and jobs, and Taylor Swift. Well, I do. But these tightly knit groups aren't without their own kinds of problems, like the development of cliques, a feeling of xenophobia or elitism towards PUGs, and just about any other social conflict you can think of when you're going to see the same people day after day. Unlike a PUG, leaving a guild or team means risking the relationships you've built up to that point. There's a sense of emotional loss that isn't felt when you're only grouped with a band of strangers for a few hours and may never meet again. For a PUG, tomorrow is a new day. As the guild raid leader, it's not easy for me to purge my team of underperformers because once the raid is over, we're still under a same banner, and I have to deal with the consequences afterwards. In a way, my role doesn't end when the raid is over. Same goes for the other members of a long-time group. It's not enough to improve ourselves, we've got to help the other members improve too. I can't just swap out guildmates and bring in better performing PUGs unless I want to risk the integrity of the guild's values. We don't try to be the best guild, but I expect us to want to do our best. As a plus, for me at least, we progress as a guild, meaning there's less pressure to know fights in advance, have a certain item level, or have consumables always at the ready. I may be the raid leader, but I don't expect any one person, including myself, to know everything. I have a team I can trust well enough to delegate certain tasks and formations. From there I analyze, make some tweaks, and then execute. Communication between key members is critical. Watching the team grow and succeed is as rewarding as any piece of gear. Arguably the biggest advantage to an organized group is a schedule. Players undoubtedly like an assured victory, and it's all the more sweeter when they know they'll be there for it. Even during progression when victory is all too distant, it's reassuring to know that in the face of a bad run, there's always the next night of wiping. But I have fears too. I've led the guild's raid team for almost 9 years, and I take to heart all the mistakes and bad calls I've made. And I'm thankful that most guildmates have forgiven me each time. But even now, if I happened to be leading a PUG, I'd be upset if I screwed up, let the raid down, and caused it to collapse. This feeling of guilt, though, is not shared among all PUG leaders. I share sentiments with players feeling the burdens of running their own group. Apart from being familiar with dungeon or raid mechanics, one solution is to just dissolve the feelings of human empathy and treat players merely as a means to an end, like tools to trade out and discard. If that doesn't suit your taste though, finding or building a regular group may be your answer. It's hard, maybe harder. If none of this works for you, you may need to admit something to yourself. You might have become a part of the majority.